Ah, I have a beanie. It makes me feel like I'm Tim Pool or something. You know, I'm not terribly a fan of the beanies and of beanie culture. It's a good hat, but there's a whole hipstery thing around it, isn't there? But I, for one, actually have a reason to wear it because I am, for all intents and purposes, a landlocked dock worker. I load trucks off of docks, literally. So, yes. For me, it is not pretentious. It is not the hat equivalent of fake glasses. It's a little chilly out. Now. In the last video, I mentioned that I was having all sorts of madness going on in my life, and that is absolutely true. You see, earlier today, I come home from my shift, and of course, I require a nap. I need to recover because I am semi-sentient and on the verge of death. As I was in the midst of rounding out my very necessary RAM cycle, my phone rings. I pick it up to hear the wonderful dialects of India. And I think, okay, well, what's this man want? He claims to be a social security representative, investigating a case involving my grandfather. Right, I think, well, because we are applying for Medicaid and the like, and I have just woken up, and you've literally caught me with my pants down, I start, answering their questions. They know our address, they know our phone numbers. And like an idiot, I go over and ask my grandfather for the last four of his social. And then they start talking about cars in Texas and cocaine. And I'm like, this is madness. And so basically, my grandfather, who's a very funny man with a slight bit of dementia from a couple of strokes he's had, starts repeatedly questioning the man where he's from, Bombay or Calcutta. Eventually, the man says he's from Delhi. And I repeatedly keep saying, hey, this sounds like a scam. And he hangs up. I Google, hey, Social Security scam. And immediately pops up Social Security. One of the, Google has lists of questions. Social Security will never call you. So don't ever give anybody any information if they're claiming to be Social Security. I did not know that. I'm not originally from this country, and also I don't pay attention to things that have to do with bureaucracies because it's just, it's a nothing. Words are hard, as Donut Operator says. You should check him out. He's a police officer, actually from my area, more or less, that does videos explaining why the police are not that bad. Anyway, caveats aside, I really wanted to point out the sort of hectic nonsense that goes on in my life. Yeah, you might think I'm dumb for falling for it, but I woke up early and we have had dealings with these kinds of issues in terms of getting Medicaid. So I thought in my sleep deprived state, well, maybe the blah. So watch out, because they'll get you, and they're out there. And that's also my excuse for having crappy and low output of content. Right, so let's just do another info medley because I'm all about the fillers this week. You're gonna get delicious fulfillment, as per Jeff Bezos, eh? Mozart and Chamber Music, Chapter 33, How Very Masonic. Now, people make a mistake who think that my art has come easily to me. Nobody has devoted so much time and thought to composition as I. There is not a famous master whose music I have not studied over and over. So, there we go. Is he just being humble? No. Most things require hard work. That's what's always driven me mad about the whole genius angle. And, yes, you need to work hard. And even if you're not a genius, I absolutely recognize that there are people that have predilections towards things and that certain kinds of pursuits are easier for certain people based partially, maybe to some extent, on, well, pretty much definitely to some extent on genetics. But I am also a big believer that genetics is overhyped. And that's why I point out things like this. The average brain can, through hard work, achieve some amazing things. It is just... Why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't it? Now, you might show me some kind of study, but the thing with studies is you can probably find a million other ones to dispute them. So go forth and work on the things that you love and that you should try going for things that are your strengths and capitalizing on those. But if you love something, like I love music, but it is definitely not my strength. I am horrific at singing and slightly tone deaf, but I do think that I have a bit of a knack for coming up with melodies, which is why I always keep on trying to refine my understanding. It's the thing that gives me hope. So hopefully that little personal example helps you kind of in your own creative endeavors kind of get a little bit of pep, a little bit of energy to get going. Yeah. So YouTube has all of these new rules. I just watched Tim Pool's video called "YouTube Drops New Rules. Already Major Creators Are Getting Strikes." And the thing of it is there's these rules, and they apply retroactively. So if you did something in the past that wasn't against the rules of the past, now as per these rules, you can get banned. And this is probably all part and parcel of them trying to promote a certain kind of content that they want on the platform and completely screwing over the people that helped develop and build the platform. I just think this is really crappy behavior, and I also found it really funny, which is why I made a post on my WordPress that they crossed out the word sexual in sexual orientation, where they're talking about how, attacks on sexual orientation won't be tolerated. Okay, fine. But why would you cross out the word sexual? It's like, is that to keep the kids safe? Because they're gonna have words about or questions about orientation, and that's not that euphemisms don't work. And I mean, it's probably just because, Zuckerberg is a cyborg and the cybernetic organisms are all quite jealous of our ability to sexually reproduce and thus don't want it mentioned because it makes them emo. All right. Well, lots and lots of great stuff out there, by the way, if you are a vlogger in terms of music on the Internet Archive. If you go to the audio section and you type in royalty free, I found a great thing called Incompotech and then Nerdy's royalty free music. And they're just fantastic sounding little things that you can use in comedy bits or as background that are basically free if you just list the person's information. Now there's another artist who I, as soon as my paycheck comes in on Friday, actually probably later tonight, going to give $50 to get basically the ability to use his music. His name is Dano, and he seems very Irish. I don't know if he's actually from Ireland, but his full name is O something. And if it's him singing on the song that I listen to with an actual vocal, he sounds a bit like Elliott Smith. I was sleep deprived at the moment, so that might not be true, but I think that's just great. And I like his sound and all that crap. And so I looked all that up, right? Fuck. I made a video the other day and I used a bunch of his music, but then I realized even though it's royalty free, it's royalty free, but you have to kind of pay like a one-time small fee, and then you can use it royalty free. That's kind of the thing I found in the Internet Archive, but it's definitely worth the $50 because he's got a lot of music, and I always want to support indie people because I am a relentless hipster, as you can tell by my beanie. Now, what to talk about next? Yeah, philosophy. So I've been talking a lot about Bertrand Russell's book, The History of Western Philosophy, but it's really, really hard because I have to read it and I have to dive in there and I have to find things to talk about and then how to make them engaging and how to relate them to real world problems or real world misunderstandings as per that Psychology Today article where the guy was saying, oh, there's no meaning and science says there's no meaning, and then I can test that and point out the differences between philosophy and science. So to continue on that course, let's just do completely off the cuff problems of philosophy. Wow, I can't type. Oh my gosh. Let's see here. Well, it comes up with a book. The book. All right. How about we just talk about a particular school of philosophical thought called Utilitarianism? Oh, baby. There's supposed to be an encyclopedia of philosophy online somewhere. If I can find it. Yeah, I think this is it. .iep.edu. Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Nice. Act and rule utilitarianism. I have a lot of problems with utilitarianism, or at least I think I do if I understand it correctly, which, given my attention span, I probably don't. So let's read. Act and rule utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is one of the best known and most influential moral theories. Like other forms of consequentialism, its core idea is that whether actions are morally right or wrong depends on their effects. terrifying. Is that basically what that whole thing of by any means necessary is about? Is that a utilitarian movement? Perhaps. More specifically, the only effects of actions that are relevant are the good and bad results that they produce. Yeah, this SS5, it's a favorite on picnic. A key point in this article concerns the distinction between individual actions and types of actions. Act utilitarians focus on the effects of individual actions, such as John Wilkes Booth's assassination of Abraham Lincoln, while rule utilitarians focus on the effects of actions such as killing or stealing. Was that Kant? Kant wasn't utilitarian. Because imperative, categorical, no. Oh, utilitarians believe that the purpose of morality is to make life better by increasing the amount of good things, such as pleasure and happiness in the world, and decreasing the amount of bad things, such as pain and unhappiness. But what about people who are into BDSM, eh? I don't know. What about people that like emo music like me? The sad things make me glad. They reject moral codes or systems that consist of commands or taboos that are based on, oh my god, it's leaking. I just made this beer very happy. They reject moral codes or systems that consist of commands or taboos that are based on customs, traditions, or orders given by leaders or supernatural beings. Not a terrible thing, necessarily. Instead, utilitarians think that what makes a morality be true or justifiable is its positive contribution to human and perhaps non-human beings, save the motherfucking whales. Do whales fuck their mother? I don't know. Okay. The most important classical utilitarians are Jeremy Bentham. Why did he bend his ham? And John Stuart Mill. Bentham and Mill were incredibly English. Theorists and social reformers. Their theory has had a major impact both on philosophical work and moral theory, and on approaches to economic, political, and social policy. Although utilitarianism has always had many critics, there are many 21st century thinkers that support it, such as Trigley Buff. The task of determining, my low battery status being at 5% but about to die, whether utilitarianism is correct, moral theory is complicated because there are different versions of the theory, and its supporters disagree about which version is correct. This article focuses on perhaps the most important dividing line among utilitarians, the clash between act utilitarians and rule utilitarians. After a brief overall explanation of utilitarianism, the article explains both act and rule, and table of contents. Next. So, as you can see, this is why it is troublesome to make videos about philosophy, because one thing leads to another, and then you have yourself a book to go over. My battery's about to die, so I gotta go. I hope you got a little bit of entertainment, a little bit of information out of this. If you like what you're seeing, subscribe to the channel, click thumbs up. If you want to call me an asshole, by all means do so. I have a website called fractaljournal.com. I'll spare you the www because you're smart enough to figure that out. There you'll find stories, ideas, and all kinds of nonsense. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great time wherever time finds you. Cheers.